As the years pass by, Father Time makes many changes in the busy town and quiet country, but there are some places he seems to have forgotten or passed by ever so lightly that they look very much the same today as they did hundreds of years ago. One of these places which Time has dealt so gently with is in the heart of Italy, built high upon a hill. It is a town whose towers and palaces and steep narrow streets are little changed from what they were 500 and more years ago, when Catherine, the Saint of Siena, was born there. Today, if you climb the steep winding road that leads up to the city and make your way through the gates and along the steepest of the narrow streets, you will come to a house with a motto written over the door in golden letters, which means, "The House of Catherine, the Bride of Christ." If you go on inside, you will see the very room where St. Catherine used to live, the bed of planks on which she slept, her little chapel, and the rooms which her brothers and sisters used. It all looks just as it did when Benincasa, the dyer of Siena, lived there with his wife Lapa. They had more than 20 children, but each one was welcome, and when at last Catherine and a twin sister were born, there still did not seem to be one too many. The little sister lived only a few days, and perhaps that made the parents love Catherine all the more. And it was not only her own family who loved her. She was the favorite of all the neighbors, and however busy they were, they would always find time to stop and talk to her as they passed. It was not that she was very beautiful or even very clever, but she had a way of making everyone feel happy when she was near them, and she had the sunniest smile that ever dimpled a baby's face. It was like a sunbeam, lighting up everything near it, and it shone in her eyes as well, so that before long people found a new name for her, and they called her Joy instead of Catherine. As soon as she could walk alone, Catherine would wander away, sure of a welcome in every house. And though at first when the other children cried, "The baby is lost again," the mother would be anxious, but soon she ceased to mind and only said, "She is sure to be safe somewhere." And safe she always was, for everyone would stop to look after her as she toddled along, and wherever she went, Joy carried the sunshine with her. It happened one afternoon that when Catherine was about 6 years old, her mother sent her and an elder brother, Stephen, to carry a message to a house some way off. It was a beautiful evening, and as the children went hand in hand down the steep street and up the hill towards the great church of St. Dominic, Catherine stopped a moment to look at the sunset. She always loved the beautiful colors, and tonight the little fleecy clouds were all touched with crimson and gold, like fairy islands and a pale green sea, more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. Stephen did not care for sunsets. He was much more anxious to be home in time for supper, so he ran alone, calling Catherine to follow quickly. Catherine did not seem to hear his voice or to notice that he was gone, but stood there with her eyes fixed on the sunset, her face shining, and her hair like a halo of gold round her head. It was not the evening sky she was looking at, but a vision of heavenly beauty. For there, among the rose-pink clouds, she saw the Madonna, seated upon a throne and holding in her arms the infant Christ. It was no longer the poor Madonna of the stable, but the Queen of Heaven, her dazzling blue robe as the summer sky, and a jeweled crown upon her head. There are no words to tell the beauty of the Christ child's face. Catherine only knew that as he looked at her he smiled and held up his little hand as if in blessing, and that smile drew her heart to his feet. Then suddenly Catherine's arm was roughly shaken, and her brother asked her impatiently at what she was gazing. "Oh, Stephen," she cried, "do you not see it too? Look!" But the vision had faded, and the gray twilight closed in upon the two little figures as they slowly went home, the boy vexed with his loitering sister, and she sobbing with disappointment to think that the window in heaven was shut, and that she might never again look within. As Catherine grew older, she never forgot the visions she had seen, or the hand of the Christ child stretched out to bless her, and it made her think often how she could best please him, so that some day he might smile on her again. Now Catherine had heard a great deal about the good men who went to live in the deserts to be alone with God, how they lived in caves and scarcely had anything to eat, and how God would sometimes send the ravens to bring them food. Now Catherine was always fond of wandering, and the idea of living in a desert seemed a beautiful way of serving Christ. She had never gone beyond the walls of the town, and all the outside was a new world to her, so she was sure if only she could pass through the city gates, she would soon find her way to the desert, where there would be certainly a cave ready for her to live in. So one day Catherine set out very early in the morning, carrying in her pocket a small loaf of bread, just in case the ravens should forget to come to a little girl hermit. In those days it was not safe to live outside the city walls, and there were no farms nor houses to be seen, as Catherine slipped through the gates and began to find her way down the hillside, among the tangled briars and over the rough stones. Soon her feet grew very tired, and everything looked so forlorn and wild that she was sure this must be the desert at last, and there, too, was a little cave in the rocks, waiting, all ready for her. It was very nice to creep in out of the hot sunshine into the cool shade, and to rest until the sun went down. But as night came on, and she knelt to say her evening prayer, she began to think of home, and the kind mother waiting there, and she knew she had done wrong to come away, even though she had meant to serve God. Very quickly she left her cave, and as she ran home her feet seemed to fly over the ground. The desert had not been so very far away at all, and she reached the house before her mother had begun to grow anxious, but she never again wandered away to live a hermit's life. As Catherine grew older, she loved to listen to the stories of the saints, and there was one that she never grew tired of hearing. It was the life of Saint Catherine of Alexandria, the saint whose name she bore. This young queen was said to be the wisest and noblest of all the saints, and when her courtiers wished to marry, she said she would only marry a prince who was perfect in every way. Such a prince, of course, was impossible to find. But one night a poor old hermit had a vision in which the Madonna came to him and told her that our blessed Lord, the only perfect man, would accept the love of a young queen's heart and the service of her hands. And when the queen knew of this, her joy was great, and that very night the Virgin Mother came to her in a cloud of glory, surrounded by angels, bearing crowns of lilies, and in her arms was the Holy Child, who smiled upon the queen and placed a ring on her finger as a sign that she belonged to him. The more Catherine thought about this story, the more she longed that Christ would accept her heart and service too. And one night in a dream he seemed to come to her, just as he had come to the other Catherine, placing a ring upon her finger and bidding her remember that now she had given her heart to him. Thus it was great trouble to Catherine when she was told by her parents soon after this that she was old enough to begin to think about marriage. She said she did not wish to marry at all, but this only made her parents angry with her, especially when one day they found that she had cut off all her beautiful golden hair, thinking to make herself so ugly that no one would want her for his wife. "Very well," said her father, "if thou wilt not marry as I bid thee, then thou shalt do the housework and be our servant." He expected this would be a great punishment, but Catherine was glad to have hard work to do, and she did it so well and cheerfully that her father began to feel his anger melt away. Then it happened one day in passing a room he looked in, and there he saw her, kneeling with clasped hands, an upturned face, and eyes which the peace of heaven shone, while around her head was a bright light that took the form of a snow-white dove resting there. From that moment on he ceased to be angry with Catherine, and said all should be as she wished, for surely the dove was a sign that God accepted her prayers and approved of what she did. So she was allowed to have a little room which she made into a chapel where she could be alone to pray and think. She wanted to learn to conquer herself before she could serve Christ in the world, and for 3 years she lived there almost entirely alone, praying in the little chapel, struggling to overcome her faults and to grow strong to resist temptation. But in spite of all her struggles, evil thoughts would come into her heart, and it seemed impossible to keep them out. It was easy to do the right things, but so terribly difficult to think only pure and good thoughts. She knew that Satan sent the wicked thoughts into her heart, but the hardest trial of all was that Christ seemed to have left her to fight alone. He seemed so very far away. At last one night, as she lay sobbing in despair, suddenly the evil thoughts left her, and instead she felt that Christ was near, and that he bent tenderly over her. "Why, oh why did thou leave me for so long, dear Lord?" she cried. "I have never left thee," his voice said quietly. "But where wert thou, Lord, when all was so dark and evil?" she humbly asked. "I was in thy heart," replied the voice. "Didst thou not hate the evil thoughts? If I had not been there, Thou wouldst not have felt how black they were, but because I was in the midst, they seemed most evil, and thus I gave thee the strength to cast them out." So Catherine's heart was filled with peace, and she learned to love Christ more and more, and to deny herself in every way, sleeping on bare planks and with a log for her pillow, and eating the things that she cared for least. It was not that she thought these things good in themselves, but she felt she must use every means to make her heart pure and fit to serve her Master. And before very long, Christ spoke to her again in the stillness of the night, and told her she had lived long enough alone, and that it was time now to go out into the world and to help other people grow good too. When Catherine thought of the noisy, busy life which other people led compared to the quiet peacefulness of her little cell in chapel, she was very sad, and thought she had offended God, that he was sending her far away from him to mix with the world again. But his voice sounded in her ears once more, and told her it was not to separate her from himself that he sent her out, but that she should learn to help others. "Thou knowest that love giveth 2 commandments, to love me and to love thy neighbor. I desire that thou should walk not on 1 but 2 feet, and fly to heaven on 2 wings." So Christ spoke to her, and Catherine, with a fearful heart, prepared to obey, only praying that he would give her the strength to do his will. And after that, her life was spent in doing good to others. The smile that used to lighten her face when she was a little child still had the power of bringing peace and gladness to all, as she went amongst the poor, nursing the sick, helping every one in trouble, and teaching people more by her life than her words to love God. And as when she was a baby they called her Joy, so now again they found a new name for her, and she was known as the child of the people. In every kind of trouble they came to her, even asking her to settle their quarrels, so that she was the peacemaker as well as the helper of the whole town.